This is the Sri Ramana Maharshi satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm not a guru or a teacher. Like you, I just love this teaching and want to share it. I'm reviewing and commenting on the book's Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. These were dialogues recorded by Major Chadwick from 1935 to 1939. This week is talk number 111. Let me get it on screen. A Telugu gentleman asked about Brahma Bhavana, and Maharshi said, not to think I am Brahman or all is Brahman is itself jivanmukti. He asked about inspired action, and Maharshi replied, let activities go on. They do not affect the pure self. Okay. Bhavana means cultivating. So the question is, how do I cultivate the sense that I am Brahman? Ramana's response is pretty radical, I think, responding to the underlying frame of reference instead of telling the gentleman how to best think about Brahman. He instructs not to think at all. That's the best way to cultivate Brahman, not through thought at all. If it's not through thought, though, then how do you do it? How do you cultivate Brahman? Not through thought means experientially, with experiential knowledge. Experiential knowledge, or direct realization, refers to the direct experience of Brahman beyond words and concepts. Experiential knowledge is only known through direct experience. Experiential knowledge is not something that can be acquired through study or intellectual understanding, but requires a direct and immediate realization of your true nature as Brahman, not the body, not the mind, not the ego, but the self, the one self, the only self that is. The method Ramana recommended for experiential knowledge is self-inquiry, or atma-vichara, investigating the nature of the self, your ideas about your own identity, and questioning the reality of the ego. By constantly questioning who am I and investigating the source of your thoughts and feelings, you can gradually come to realize the true nature of the self as Brahman, that is always present, even as mind, body, and ego change and come and go. Another way to see this experiential knowledge is what comes from the direct knowledge of existence, like you know that you exist without sensing it or thinking about it. You know it by being it. Other practices that are helpful in attaining experiential knowledge of Brahman include meditation and yoga and devotional practices such as chanting or prayer or surrender. Ultimately, however, full experiential knowledge of Brahman is said to depend upon the grace of the divine and cannot be achieved through your own efforts alone. So it is not something that I do. I can ready the ground, but I can't make it bloom. Practice and inquiry prepare the ground. If you are full of yourself, it will never bloom. Then, when asked about action, Ramana likewise says the best action is no action, to just let activities go on. No action actually touches you. Action is done by the body, for the body. Are you a body? If you're not a body, are any of the actions of the body your action? If you're not a body, what does this do to your sense of agency? Are you the doer? Are the actions your actions? Do you do them? This is something that I still struggle with. So Ramana tells us no thought, no action, just direct experiential knowledge, knowledge of being as being itself. I also want to talk a bit about inquiry. Self-inquiry is not limited to just the question, who am I? Self-inquiry is a more extensive investigation that involves questioning the many misidentifications that we assume to be true about ourselves. For example, we may identify ourselves with our physical body, our thoughts and emotions, our actions, our roles, our accomplishments, or our experiences. These are all misidentifications, identifying yourself as something you are not. The purpose of self-inquiry is to examine these misidentifications and to investigate their true nature. Through this process of investigation, we begin to recognize that these misidentifications are not the true nature of our being, but rather constructs of the mind. For example, when we identify ourselves with our physical body, we may believe we are limited to our physical form, and that our experiences are limited and determined by the sensations and perceptions of the body. However, through self-inquiry, we can begin to question whether this identification is true and investigate the nature of the self that is aware of these perceptions. Similarly, when we identify ourselves with our thoughts and emotions, we may believe that we are the thinker or the feeler of these experiences. But through self-inquiry, we can begin to question whether this identification is accurate and investigate the true nature of the self that is aware of these thoughts and emotions. By questioning these misidentifications, we begin to let go of the limitations of the ego and recognize our true nature as awareness, as pure consciousness. Through self-inquiry, we can realize that we are not limited to our physical form, our thoughts, our emotions, or our experiences, but rather we are infinite and eternal, beyond these constructs. In these sessions, I focus our inquiry on ideas that are relevant to the teachings of Ramana Maharshi from the session. In this context, the purpose of inquiry is not just to intellectually understand Ramana's teachings, but to bring these teachings into our direct experience. By using inquiry to explore Ramana's teachings, we begin to deepen our understanding of them and can apply them more directly to our lives. The purpose of using inquiry in this way is to bring the teachings of Ramana in from the level of intellectual understanding to the level of direct experience. By exploring these teachings through self-inquiry, we begin to cultivate a deeper sense of awareness and understanding, and we begin to apply these teachings in a more meaningful way to our own lives and to our own spiritual practice. Self-inquiry is a powerful tool for self-exploration and self-discovery. It allows us to investigate the misidentifications that limit our understanding of ourselves and to realize the deeper truth of our being. So inquire, know yourself, and be always happy and at peace. And now we'll have a discourse from Nomi, Essential Knowledge.
True knowledge is essential. The nature of true knowledge is pure being. In true knowledge lies peace and liberation. Such knowledge is non-objective in its character. Therefore, the Maharshi has emphasized that one should know that one is the self, and not merely think, I am the self. One should know the I, which is Brahman, and not merely think, I am Brahman. One should know that I am all that there is, and not merely think all this is Brahman or all this is the self. Real knowledge is non-objective. When we think about something, there is always something. One's thoughts are always objective and seem to shine only by the reflected light of consciousness, which is real knowledge. Self-knowledge has nothing to do with thinking. It is neither thinking of something nor is it trying to think of nothing. It is the non-objective, hence thought transcendent, awareness of one's own nature. Whatever you would think of the self, it is not that. Who you are is inconceivable. You have never thought of yourself, nor will you ever think of yourself. What you are is forever non-objective. The non-objective is the eternal. Self-realization consists of such non-objective knowledge, and consequently it also is eternal. If it is eternal, it is not lost at one time and attained at another, but rather is quite beyond such considerations. For to speak of it as such would be like saying, I exist at one time, but I don't exist at another. The inquiry to know who you are consists of the very knowledge itself. Who am I? It is not thinking about who I am. It is knowing who I am. Within the context of thought, there are ever so many possible states and conditions, ranging from the sensory, which are a kind of thought, for they are only in the mind, to that which is more subtle. But you are not any of that. Nor are you in any of that. The non-objective never takes up a habitation in the objective. That is, the real does not take up a home in the unreal. Knowledge reveals, the inquiry reveals. Inquiring to determine your own nature. Do not so much try to think about yourself, rather discard all thought as being superfluous, utterly incapable of defining what in truth you are. Knowledge is not thought, knowledge is not gained by thought, just as it is not a sense perception and is not gained by the senses. Inquiry does not start with a thought. It certainly does not end with a thought. Its substance, its light, its purpose, its goal, is only this knowledge. It is called knowledge, but it is not knowing of something. Nor in truth can it be divided into the duality of I know, I do not know, or ignorance and knowledge as they are commonly understood. With what light do you know yourself? By what means do you know that you exist, even now? What is it that has known everything there is to be known, inclusive of all thought, yet has never been known by any of that? To consider yourself as if on one side of the wall of thought, and the self to be found on the other side of it, is just another thought. So if you would have that conception, it should be utterly abandoned. As the Maharshi frequently instructed, for whom are the thoughts? Knowledge is of the very nature of the self. What can be said about the self? It exists. This cannot be said of anything else. It exists. Because the ideas of anything else are entirely based upon misidentification, the confusion regarding the nature of yourself, the inquiry aims, the knowledge aims, in practice, at the destruction of such misidentification. If misidentification ceases, bondage is found to be entirely unreal. There is no scope for ignorance, and the samsara does not exist. Therefore, knowledge consists of knowing your identity to be only that, the self, and nothing but that. The dissolution of misidentification, or we may say the absorption of one's identity in that, as that itself, such is the knowledge. Who could possibly think of this?
All right, let's take a few minutes now and inquire. Notice that you exist, and you know that you exist. Now, inquire, investigate within yourself. What do you know for certain? What are you sure about? What fluctuates, has beginning or ending comes and goes. Do you come and go? Maybe you feel like it when you slept, but someone knows you had a good sleep. Who knows this? What is always present, whether you notice or not? Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? What actually exists? What is always? All right. And let's close with our chant. Om Shanti, Shanti,
Shanti,
Shanti.
Shanti.
Om. Peace, peace, peace. All right. Any comments or discussion?
Hmm.
Trying to see where Doug's going.
Yeah, I just again appreciate Ramana saying, and let action happen. It's
Yes.
going to happen. It's just that's just very helpful for me to hear that again and again.
Very good. Me too. Me too.
Hmm. Yeah.
And as you know, I still have a bad case of thinking I'm the one who does this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to accept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just let it be.
Right.
Well, on one level, I know that, but
Mhm.
on the other level,
Yeah.
Right. You don't.
yeah,
It's
I
not your
don't.
experience. It's not your experience. That's one reason why I think, particularly these inquiries on the body. Am I the body? Am I the doer? Am I the one that's doing this? I know this,
Mhm.
but am I doing it? And for me, the particular issue is, am I the agent? Because I feel like somehow there it is at least some part of my life that I'm responsible for.
Mhm.
And, I suspect that is a bigger barrier to my spiritual progress than my desire to smell the roses along the way.
We act as though there's some fine definition or line between us doing something and us not doing something.
Uh-huh.
I clearly don't make the sunrise and the sunset. I don't make anything happen that's going on there.
Right,
In
right,
my body, I have no idea what my liver is doing right now,
right, right,
or any of the cells of my body. But at some point, I cross a line and go, "Oh, I'm doing that."
right.
You
You're,
know,
yes, what you're saying is exactly correct. And just
yeah,
by looking at it that way, it can help you to see it's all just a set of ideas. And
yes,
the ideas divvy it up. The sunrise is from God. My uh, who wrote the copy for this satsang? I did that.
yeah. We have these little things that we parcel off as our responsibility and our doing.
Yeah,
It's a bit crazy.
yeah,
Especially you get up in the morning and think, okay, well, now I'm going to do this, and then this is going to happen, and blah, blah, blah. And it
that's right.
turns out
That's
absolutely none of that happens
uh-huh.
because
I start with the thought, what's today? Today
right,
is Wednesday. What have I got to do today?
right.
Yes.
Yes, well, the plumber was supposed to come, but his father had a stroke. Now, how am I, you know, I, oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, well, I guess I don't have any control over that,
Uh-huh.
but I think, but I'm working on it.
The other thing that still kind of confuses me is I really do understand uh, the story of you're not the doer, but at the same time, I hear like Ramana and Shankara say things like realization comes to those who make effort. And
Mhm.
if I'm not the doer, how can I make any effort?
Yeah. Well, I think I've read somewhere that the only real thing that you are the doer of is to turn your attention outward or inward, and
Right,
that's it.
right.
And so the effort, and it is an effort, is to keep the attention inward.
Right. But I have to
Mhm.
ask, who's making that effort?
Yeah, the
And I have
ego.
to ask that because of my own confusion, not just because I'm a troublemaker.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the little bit left of the ego,
Uh-huh.
which
Right.
we are not going to stomp it out It
Right.
has to be, like you said, through grace that it's finally extinguished.
Right.
But we have to get right up to the edge with our self-inquiry.
And like I said here, we can prepare the ground, but we
Yeah.
can't make the flower grow.
That's right. Yeah. Darn it.
Damn it, that's right.
But we can't even prepare the ground.
Well, we can that's what practice is about, is preparing the ground.
Yeah.
That's why, again, Shankara says, realization comes to he who practices. Anyway, to me, if we leave this asking questions within ourselves about all this stuff, then I feel like this was a successful session. Because inquiry is about asking questions, not so much about the answers. So again, it seems like a good session, and thank you for joining again today. And I still thank Ramana and Major Chadwick for the work they did to record all these things. So Chadwick was there for 4 years recording these dialogues. That's why we have them. So thank you, Major Chadwick.
Yes.
And namaste. And we'll
Namaste.
see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this Ramana Maharshi video, subscribe, like, and send me a comment.